I find plenty of coverage that I think is very balanced, very informative. I think that there's been new energy injected into the fact-checking movement. During the debates, we've seen a lot of resources going into fact-checking in some of the major news organizations. I think if you look around, there's more sources, more objective information than one would think. At the same time, I think it's definitely true that some organizations have seen this as an unusual challenge and have gone out further on a limb than they ordinarily would, and they've admitted that.
Okay. Now, as the dean of the journalism school, when you ask your students or your professors ask their students to do various assignments, especially covering political races, do you look for that sort of bias, or is there any way for someone to take their personal beliefs, put them to the side, and actually just report?
I think there absolutely is, and I've spent my career trying to put my own personal beliefs aside. I think we all know that is impossible to do 100%, that your own beliefs are always there, and the best thing to do is to confront that and try to counter your own beliefs with balance on both sides. And that's what we teach our students, that they need to be fair, that they need to go out there and look for opinions, especially hard for opinions that they most strongly disagree with. So that is what we teach our students. At the same time, we do teach them to go after lies. We teach them to pursue the truth and to really go after people with flagrant disregard for the truth. So when somebody comes on and basically starts making up facts, and I'm not naming anybody in particular, they're going to make themselves a target, I think, for closer scrutiny. And that is something that we do teach our students.
Okay. Now, I remember many years ago, I think long before you came here, one of the Watergate reporters, it was either Woodward or Bernstein, came and spoke at the University Center, and I was just beginning to start, venturing into, because it had become my job by default to start covering stories. And having lived through that era, he had a question and answer period, and I raised my hand and I asked him, because he had mentioned several times that the journalists are supposed to be the watchdog for society, so that they can keep an eye out and make sure that people are aware of what's going on. And the question I asked him, at what point does a watchdog become an attack dog? And he laughed, and he said, that's a really interesting question, and I guess that's pretty much in the eye of the beholder. So how would you answer that question?
Well, again, to the point of whether or not journalists have biases, journalists have values. We do speak out in favor of human rights, of the rights of the individuals. We do stick up for the oppressed and try to, oppress the comfortable. So whenever somebody steps on those basic human values, I think that the press should become an attack dog. Let's face it, Richard Nixon was a crook. He did crooked things, and he deserved the heat that he got from the press because he pushed so hard on the legal boundaries of his office. So as I said before, if somebody is completely disregarding the truth and is basically misleading people, it is incumbent upon journalists to point that out. And if that leads to the appearance of bias, then I would be okay with that. But again, as far as teaching our students, the skills we teach them are to discriminate between the truth and blatant falsehood. Most of the stories we do, it's extremely difficult to tell the difference. One thing I don't defend is he said, she said journalism, especially when it comes to the election. And if you were to cover this election by simply saying, well, Hillary says this and Donald says this, I don't think you'd be doing your listeners or your viewers a great service. In some cases, more scrutiny is appropriate in order to say this person's argument just is incredible and it doesn't square with the facts.
Sure. Is there a point when, as a reporter, you throw up your hands and you say, you know what, it looks like both candidates are acting reprehensibly, And so, in that particular instance, what do I do as a journalist?
Well, again, the truth is your guide, and if you feel like both candidates have gone off the rails, our first job isn't to judge people or judge candidates. It's to, create the first draft of history, give people a perspective, help them understand what's going on there, and that doesn't always require judging, the truthfulness or the sensibleness of somebody's statements. And again, I was pointing to this fact-checking function. We have research out there that other people can get to, but they just don't have the time to. And so, I think that there's plenty of work to be done to help people make up their own minds, and that's what a democracy is about. Is they are supposed to be able to walk into the voting booth with the tools to make their own decision. And I don't think any journalist would question the ability or the basic responsibility of the voters to vote on their own understanding.